This one on.
Recording in progress.
Okay. So, for those that tried to join my live yesterday, my humble apologies. The internet said no, and then the power company said no. So in the end, I just gave up. It's just plain rude. Okay, so let's kind of rewind a little bit and kind of cover some of the stuff that I kind of assumed you guys already had to heart. So my bad on that one. So let's start by talking about what are we doing here in the first place. You know, a lot of you guys have been like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, what we doing, what we doing. So what I want to cover initially is just a discussion around why are we even building a lab? What is the purpose of building a lab? Now, the point that it's, you know, really important to make right at the beginning here is that, you know, in reality, you don't need a lab. It's not something that is a must-have. You will not survive without them, because everyone, you know, many out there have never bothered to build a lab. They've never done any study per se at home. You know, they go to work, they use the work stuff, they use the work study, and that's that. You know, you can use TryHackMe, you can use Immersive Labs. They're not massively expensive to buy your own license for when Master School isn't funding it. So what's the benefits of having your own lab? Well, first and foremost, you control the environment. And if you control the environment, that means you control the use cases and the scenarios that you're working towards. So, you know, let's take TryHackMe for a quick moment. You know, they will build a environment for you. They will give you a use case. They will give you a set of instructions. You will log on, you will follow the instructions, you will achieve the task, and then you will leave it, and they will destroy that environment and rebuild it ready for the next one. But you won't really take home or build into your knowledge banks the full use case and full scenario. You've just literally put a tape in, you followed some instructions, you got to an outcome, and that's that. You haven't really learned. Where what I'm trying to facilitate, and the way I teach, is that I give you the reason to go and learn, and I give you the guides loosely, because, you know, at the end of the day, everything I'm creating I'm finding on the internet too. So if I can find it, so can you. And what I'm trying to give to you, and I'm sure you'll have seen it if you watched that live session from previous, is that I want you to go through the process of actually building the environment as well as building the use case. Because if you've built the environment, then you understand the environment. If you've built the environment, you understand the problems and the flow and where the data is. Furthermore, you can control what you want to capture within that environment. So let's take malware analysis, for example, which, let's all be fair, is quite a way down the road for us at the moment. But if you wanted to build a malware analysis, if you went to TryHackMe, you could log in, you could explode your data, you would do the analysis as TryHackMe permits, and that is that. It's gone, it's done. You can't take it out of the service, you can't extract anything. If you build your own, running Cuckoo, running Remnux, whatever, you can control the output of the data that you find. So if you're pulling IOCs out of it, and you're pulling kind of indicators of what that malware is doing, what connections it makes to IPs, what DNS requests it makes, if you can extract that data, you can take that data to work then and use it for your next threat hunt. You know, you're playing with malware over the weekend, Monday morning, you're looking for evidence of that malware running in your environment. So there's point one. Point two is when you're using their environments, you're bound by the constraints of the operating systems that they want you to use. So if you want to learn a particular install of Linux, for example, or as I was just chatting to one of the other guys, you know, a different type of SIEM, you know, you're bound by Splunk, for example, if that's what they're using in TryHackMe. But if you want to learn one of the open source ones, Breaking in what way? Lagging.
With network issues. I'm asking why I get myself. I don't know about anybody else.
Alright, keep an eye on it. If it's causing a problem, I'll see if I can modify it slightly to run better. But if you're controlling the environments, then you dictate what's in place. So, for example, you could be using Splunk 1 week, you could be using an Elk Stack the next week, you could be using OSSIM the week after, and you can do exactly the same use cases against different seams, where, you know, TryHackMe will just have a Splunk variation and you'll do some searching on it, but it will still use the same rehashed environments. You won't be able to modify it in the way you want it. And if you want to go down that deep dive engineering side as well to understand why it works the way it works, then you're going to need control of those factors. And you're not going to be able to do that in a predefined lab environment where they built it for you, because you're not going to have anything to do. It's already done. So you're going to need to have that. And having your own lab is what gives you that freedom. You know, you can build 30 hosts if you really want to. You don't need them all running. But what you can do is you can kind of group them in a manner like scenario based. So, you know, let me just quickly whip across to, you know, I've got these ones all just grouped as virtual lab, but you can group them as, you know, malware hosts. You can group them as network hosts, full packet capture, Splunk only, different seam. You know, you can have it grouped how you want to group them, and you can rebuild them or just copy the ones that you've got working. You don't have to start from scratch with every one you're building. You can have them scenario based, and you can do very similar in each of the variations of, you know, Proxmox or VirtualBox. How you want to deploy your network is completely up to you. You can spin it up and tear it down and configure it based on the use case that you're using it. What I'm trying to get you guys to do initially is just build that baseline variation that you can use and then tweak however you want it. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
You know, because
Yes.
I start getting a load of messages like, oh, do I need this? Do I need that? Why do I need this? And a couple of you just went off on absolute tangents trying to build the entire world. And we don't need to be there yet. We will get there in a few weeks. But what I wanted to start with initially is just, let's build something that we can use as a basis of our use cases. So we need a Linux box, we need a Windows 10 box, we need a Windows server or something to do our routing. It doesn't have to be Windows, but Windows is nice and easy, and I'll show you in a few minutes on how to configure that. And then, you know, later we'll start getting a bit more advanced. We'll bring in GNS3, we'll bring in some Cisco router emulation, we'll start playing with some Cisco routers, we'll start bringing up interfaces, configuring cloud-based communications, and we'll have some proper fun with it. If you know, if that's where everyone wants to go, then we'll head down that way. Because I'm sure you'll all love a bit of hands-on with a Cisco kit too, especially if you've got CCNA in your sights in the near future. You know, so I'm more than happy to go down there, although you're going to have to obviously bear with me. My CCNA knowledge is rusty as hell, so I'll be learning with you. But, you know, this is kind of the path I want to take you. I'm not here to hold your hand. I don't want to say, you know, here's a document I've created and it's going to say click next, enter this, click next, click next. That's not how I think the best way to learn is how. And, you know, people will disagree with me. I totally get that, and ultimately I don't care. This is the way I teach, and this is the way I think you will learn the best. And the reason why I believe that is because, you know, that's how I've learned over the years. I am 100% self-taught. Everything I've learned, all my experience, has ultimately come from me taking an interest in something and just chasing that down until I get there. And right now, just to give you an idea where I am today, I'm currently starting a new learning experience with something called Attack IQ. Has anyone heard of Attack IQ?
I think.
So Attack IQ, I bloody lost the page. Where's it gone? Ah, here it is. Doo-doo-doo. So Attack IQ it's kind of a purple teaming capability. What they do, they do physical control testing in your environment. So you deploy your SIEM, you deploy your endpoint protection, you deploy your SOC, and what Attack IQ's capability will do is it will emulate and physically mimic a ransomware attack in your environment, and it will capture where did you detect it, did you block it, did your analyst detect it, and then it kind of helps someone like me build reports to kind of identify the gaps in the blue team capability and kind of enable the red team capability for future testing, and it kind of builds that gap and bridge between the two. Attack IQ academy.attackiq at the top is the URL. I'll stick it in the chat if anyone's interested. It's really good for giving you a good insight into the attack framework as well. So although I've been teaching it forever, my overall understanding of the attack framework is a little bit rusty. So that's where I'm at today, and that's what I'm studying. So don't get in your head that when you're done master school, that's it. You don't need to learn anymore, because the reality will be that you're going to be learning now until the day you retire cyber, because cyber moves that fast. By the time you guys have got your jobs, in a few months' time, the amount of stuff that you've learned will probably still have exactly the same amount of stuff to learn on arrival in your new job. You're going to have to learn their environment and learn their technology. They may be using stuff that you've never even heard of. We've played with Splunk. We've talked about the Elk Stack and Elasticsearch and things like that. But when you rock up there, they might be using QRadar. They might be using Logic Logarithm, for example, which is a bit of an older SIM these days, but it is still out there. They might be using Alien Vault, which you'll have never seen. So your learning curve on arrival is going to be, straight up. And what I'm trying to promote is keeping in that learning mentality. When you're going through the job descriptions of these companies that you look at, and it says, you need experience with Logic Apps, or you need Splunk, or you need this or that, you can start your learning process before you even start the interview process. You can say, right, they're going to be asking questions about Splunk, so start learning Splunk, start refreshing yourself in Splunk, get it running in your lab, get attacks running across the network that you've created. You can use Kali Linux with Metasploit. You can deploy the attack. Remember, the attacks don't need to be successful. You don't need to be an awesome hacker hacking Windows 10. That's not the objective of your lab. The objective of your lab is to prove that you can generate the information and then find it to show it happened in whatever SIEM or logging environment you create. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah. So when you're sat in your interview and they go, what SIM experience have you got? You don't have to say, well, I haven't really got any. You can say, very recently I've been working with Splunk. I've done a lot of investigations around identifying malware deployments. I've been looking at scans across the network. You don't have to talk about having had a job doing it, because you've actually been doing it, and you're not just doing it inside a TryHackMe. You say, oh yeah, I've done some TryHackMe labs, because they're going to wash that off. But if you are talking about having done a full investigation that you've instigated yourself, which makes it no less valuable than the one you're going to do in their office, but you can talk about it. You can talk about the report that you generated as a result of it. Just because you didn't give that report to nobody doesn't mean you can't create one as a result of your lab findings. Does that make sense to everybody? Because then
Yeah,
when you're in the
okay.
interview and you're talking about this, you're talking with confidence. You're talking about something you have actually done, not just theoretical, but something you've actually done. You know, you can jump on the latest threat intelligence websites and they'll be talking about these types of attacks and this type of attack. You can download those kind of scripts and those emulations and go to things like Attack IQ, because Attack IQ is free. Believe it or not, its baselining is free. You can download Attack IQ. Kenny, you're making me dizzy, dude. you can download Attack IQ and you can use Attack IQ to generate these attacks and get that into your SIEM that you've deployed. You know, there is loads of things that you can do so that when you're presenting yourself in your interviews, you sound and come across as a confident analyst, not just somebody who's been in a class. Everybody on the same page as me now, yeah? What's your question, Mark?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You still muted, fella. You didn't unmute.
Yeah, okay, so they said, okay, we're using this ISEM, and you said, no, I haven't used this, but yeah, I've been using Splunk, and I've been using this in simulated environment, so...
You don't even need to add this simulated environment. You don't need to add that. Unless they ask, you don't add it. Yeah? You don't lie, but don't present knowledge unnecessarily. You know?
That's not a lie, because we got the simulated environment, so we...
Yeah, no, but my point is by presenting, by adding the data that it's a simulated environment, you downgrade the value of the knowledge you're kind of putting across. So
Okay.
unless they outright ask what environment were you doing that in, and then you say, well, it was a lab environment, you know, that was built as per a stack of use cases using Attack IQ, using the MITRE ATT&CK framework, you know, using whatever. But unless they outright ask what was the environment you were doing this data in, don't tell them. Don't offer that data.
Because they might think you've done it in a live environment.
Exactly. You're not lying, but you're just giving the knowledge you've got that little bit more value, that little bit more, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Credibility, that's the word I'm looking for. You know, because what you don't want is them to discredit what you've done and what you've learned because it's, you know, theoretical, because it was done in a classroom environment. Because if you present this as, you know, I did this investigation based on some red teaming that I was conducting, you're implying that it's a lab environment. You know, I was conducting some red team activities, and then as a result of that, I ran an investigation to make sure I could identify what I did. These were the sort of things I did. I generated a report that covered the IOCs, it covered the activity, I identified the inception point, I managed to isolate the host as a result of it, and, you know, then you can move on to the next question. If they push you, you know, they'll eventually get there, but the more they push you, the more they're looking to understand of your understanding, and then you can start getting into configurations of what you did in your environment, what it was configured, what you had deployed. I had it all routed through a Cisco router. I was routing it through Windows, so I had full packet capture. I did a lot of analysis of the PCAP files afterwards just to make sure I understood what was going on the wire. Packets never lie. You know, you can start building on it and moving on to it. And then you're kind of just negating the fact that you haven't done this working for a company, because experience is experience. As long as you can present that experience as practical application, not just theory. And that's the purpose that you have for building your own labs. Because the failure that you will inevitably endure on building labs will instill knowledge, because you'll have to figure out, as you watch the video that, you know, I've done in the past, even though I've been doing a lot of this stuff for absolute years, the amount of times I'll sit here and go, yeah, I don't remember how to do this, and then I have to figure it out there and then on the fly, or I'll Google it and Google will tell me how to do it, or somebody else on Stack Overflow will tell me how to do it, or worst case scenario, I'll just go and ask ChatGPT, dude, how do I do this? And it'll go, you do it like this. You know, there's always an answer. So you don't need to know everything. It's not the 1990s where everything came from a book and your knowledge was in that book, and to go and get that knowledge you had to go and find it in the index. You can ask ChatGPT and it'll give you a live video. You can jump on YouTube. There is literally a video for everything. So why learn to know? What you need to learn is how to find. Does that make sense to everyone? Is everyone kind of grasping what I'm saying? I don't know is a legitimate answer, because nobody needs to know everything, and anyone who pretends to is a red flag for me as a recruiter. You know, somebody who comes to me and blags that they know everything, as far as I'm concerned, is going to be a problem in my SOC, because they're a know-it-all. They're a, I know it, I'm right, stop messing with me. I don't want that mentality. I don't want that mindset. I want someone to be aware of their own limitations. I want them to be aware of where they're going to fail and where they're going to struggle, because I want to know that they will go and look it up before they cause problems. Does that make sense to everyone, yeah? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Excellent. Right, so now we're all on the same page. Let's have a little jump into our Windows box. Right, so first and foremost then, before we kind of get into the deep dive, some of you kind of went and found the information around how the network is configured from my previous video. But what I'd like to kind of talk about first, if we go into view, I've lost it again, edit, here we go. Now, underlyingly, and the reality is that you do not need to segregate your virtual machines onto different networks. You don't need to do that. You can do it using IP addressing, and the way IP addressing works, as I'm sure most of you understand, is that a host will only talk in its own network. So you don't need to do this physical separation if you don't want to. But practice is good practice, so proving that it's not working by fluke, it's better to physically separate these networks, because I don't know if you guys are aware, but if you just turn on 5 Windows machines without deploying a DHCP server onto the same physical network, they will be able to talk. And they will be able to talk using something called automatic IP address allocation, which is the 169.162 or something like that. That's the one. So they will automatically talk on a Class B address. So, and you don't want to be, networking by accident. So, and I'm always a big believer that if your eventual plan is to play with malware, which I'm kind of assuming a lot of you are wanting to get to eventually, then you should always be able to turn off the internet at a click of a button. And that could be simply by turning off your firewall, for example. So, in doing that, what I strongly suggest you do is... let's try that again. So, what I strongly suggest you do is plan your network ahead of building your network. So building your hosts and installing your hosts is fine, because right now you're just setting out what hosts are going to be where. But before you actually start communicating between them, I strongly suggest you kind of sit down and decide, where is my data going to be? Right, quick. Where is TeamViewer? There we go.
Okay, so this editor is in the VMware. I look it up. It says in the VMware.
2 seconds. Hold on. I'm just connecting. There we go. on a new note, new. Why is it stupid dark mode? Dark mode isn't handy.
Dave, are we gonna show how to connect all these VMs this time, or? Do you want
Yep.
us- Okay.
Okay, so but before we do that, let's do some chit chat. I'll just write in white. There we go. Okay, that's showing up okay, is it? Excellent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what you need to kind of do before you start connecting stuff, before you start building VM nets and stuff, is first kind of visualize your network in terms of how's it going to flow. So we've already decided at the moment that everything is going to go through that Windows 22, 19, 16, whichever you want to choose, that you're using as a router. Now, if you really want to and would prefer, that can be pfSense. If you want to deploy pfSense instead, that's completely your choice. And I'll probably look at, going through a process and a tutorial how to use pfSense as a central router in a couple of weeks. But that's totally up to you. Okay, so everything at the moment, the way we're going to start our plan to start with is going to go through our Windows 22 box. So our Windows 22 box is going to need a adapter on every network that we create, because if it's not connected to the network, it can't route to the network. That makes sense to everybody, yes?
Yes.
Excellent. Right, so let's just bring up the... Lost it. Right, so the first one, VMnet 0, is our bridge network. So if you put any virtual machine on that bridge network, that auto bridge network, you are essentially putting your virtual machine on your physical home network. It will have an address the same as your laptop, the same as your phone, and everything else. Now, if you want to do that at your router, which is the way I personally do it at the moment, that totally works. Because all you need to do to turn off the internet is go into your router and just disable that interface. Internet gone from your network. Problem solved. If you want to put another layer on, then you put your pfSense or your internal firewall on the bridge network, and then put everything else behind that network. Everyone kind of understand what I'm saying at this point, yes?
So I could just put a pfSense on the bridge network to put a firewall between my network and the router?
Yes, exactly that. Okay, so
Okay. So you are saying that pfSense and Windows Server can run together. But one has to be...
if you want to, you don't need to, but if you want to. Again, if you want pfSense experience, then here's a perfect use case to deploy it.
Okay,
Perfect.
awesome.
Yeah, because you can configure pfSense to say anything on the bridge network can talk into your network, but nobody on the internal network can talk to anyone on your physical network except the router. And you can create rules in pfSense that says if it's a box inside your VMware lab and it wants to talk to the internet, that's okay. If it wants to talk to your phone, absolutely not. And the scenario that's preventing is if you detonate malware and it starts scanning networks, it can't scan your local network. It can scan its own network. It can scan anything that it's physically connected to via the router, but it can't go past the pfSense ACL rules.
Okay, see, that's what I was curious about, because I wanted to play around with it, but I was terrified that I would do something wrong and mess with my host network.
Yeah, and that's kind of how you set that apart. But yes, pfSense is a host-based VM, a virtual VM that you can download as a virtual appliance. We'll cover that in a couple of weeks. I'll show you how that works. Okay, so in terms of physical networks within VMware, you have up to 19 networks that you can use. Now, the VM0 is your physical network, so don't use that except on your external gateway or while you're building your hosts. I recommend while you're building hosts, you stick them on the Bridge 0, because that way you can install updates, you can download additional packages, you can install all your fun stuff. Once it's configured, you move it off that network. Right. Then next, so the way my little environment is going to be configured, I used to have a shiny one, but it's gone, so I have to build it again. I tend to work on the premise of a internal network. So off the side of here, let me just switch back to this. I have my internal network, and in here is where my Windows 10 box will sit, my AD domain controller will sit because I want to play with Active Directory, and maybe a web server if I want to use kind of a virtualized web server for something to attack. FTP servers, web servers, you can emulate them all. We'll talk about that in a bit. So that basically is my virtual corporate network, as it were. That's what everyone is trying to attack. This is what I want to save. Now, you can, if you want, also inside that network put your Splunk or your SIM, whatever you want to send your network to. That can sit in that network too, if you want it to. However, personally, I've lost undo. I prefer to have my Splunk box on a separate network. I can't type today. I had brain injections earlier. They've clearly broken me. Okay, so that's where I put my Splunk box. And the reason why I put my Splunk box there is because when we're talking about those ACLs again, I can say everything can talk to Splunk to send logs in only on port 8000, but outside of that scope, nothing talks to Splunk. And I also, if I want to, can then, and I probably will for you guys later, open up that Splunk box so that you guys can get into my Splunk box, use my Splunk box, without venturing into the rest of my network. Okay, so once we've got our Splunk network or our logging network, we've got our internal network, which is where our crown jewels and goods are going to be. We want somewhere for the bad guy to play. Now, obviously, we don't want to stick that out on the actual internet, because when you start hacking over the internet, you start breaching people's rules. So we need to virtualize our attacker network. So if we create another network that's got Kali sat in it, and another host in there maybe is I forgot the name of the other box, the purple team in box from Sans. Somebody Google it quick. What's it called?
No.
Or Cali Purple?
Kali Purple is a good one, but there's actually a Sans one, not the Kali one. It's a Sans Forensics box.
Oh, I was gonna say, I only know like a bunch of different Kalis, like Tails Linux and Parrot.
It is SIFT, SIFT, SIFT Workstation. It's called. It is the good guy equivalent of the Kali box. So it does forensics. It can do a whole stack of stuff, and we'll do some playing around with that in the coming weeks as well. It's based on Ubuntu. And you can actually install it straight on a fresh Ubuntu if you don't want to download the Kali VM pre-configured. Completely up to you how you do it. But we're going to stick that in that environment too. And then off the back of that is then the internet. Which, if you want to, you can put another device / network in the middle of that, which can be your pfSense firewall, if that's what the level of control you want. Initially, you don't need to, because remember, every box you deploy has to be live while you're doing your testing, and if you've got limited resources in terms of RAM, you don't have 64 gig of RAM in your box, then having a Kali box and a Splunk box and a Windows 10 box and your router box and a pfSense VM running as well, that's a lot of resources. So, you know, build this out based on what you have available to you, not necessarily what is best in breed, as it were. Does that make sense to everybody? Yes?
Yes, it makes sense. I have a quick question. Sorry if it's a basic question. What do you mean by bridge network, please?
Bridge network is that VM0. So when we kind of talk about this, yeah, this is VMware.
Okay.
Yeah, and inside that is your physical host. And what VM0 does, so in here you've got your Wi-Fi where your internet is connected to. That interface is mimicked as VM0 into your VMware. So if you give any box access to that VNet 0, you are effectively putting that virtual machine here.
So follow up to this. So one of the computers, like on my VM, said, "Would you like this computer to discover all devices on your network?" Something like that, right?
So that's a Windows setting that basically decides whether or not to deploy the Windows firewall in private or public mode. So what it does when you deploy Windows out of the box, and you say yes to that box, it sets the network firewall configuration to private, which means it trusts everything on that network. If you say no, then it sets the firewall settings to public, which means it doesn't trust anything on the network, and it reduces the Windows footprint. If you want to use that Windows box as your Windows 10 attack surface, then you're going to kind of need to set that to a private setting, so that things like Kerberos and all of those Windows services will be open to you to attack, because if you set it to private, then it locks all of those Windows services down so that they can't be connected
Is
to.
there any risk that, like, by making your computers discoverable, that the virus can pop?
Well, again, this is about what you're exposing to. So, within the environment that you plan to deploy your malware, you know, you're gonna more than likely set up a separate malware box. Because remember, your corporate network piece, you know, you're not going to deploy your malware in here. This is what you're attacking. Yeah. When you're running your malware, you're more than likely going to want to do that in a little Bastion host on its own, in its own virtual environment, and the only thing it will have connectivity to will be maybe your Kali box, and maybe a Remnux box that's pretending to be DNS, etc.
So isolated Bastion host. Okay.
Your malware box is going to be locked down a lot more than your internal network. This is going to be considered a trusted environment. You're going to be quite happy to play in here because you're pretending it's a work environment. You're going to do things like connecting to email. You're going to do things like connecting to Office 365 and things like that. And the reason you're going to do these things is because you're going to want to generate the logs of that activity that you can send to your Splunk box, so that you can see what does activity for a normal user look like in an environment where they're connecting to their email server, when they're logging on, when they're logging off.
Right, that makes sense. So we would have like multiple, like one. Okay, that makes sense. One.
Yeah,
that's-
and remember this box here, this little Windows box here, can be a copy of this box.
you can clone it. Yeah.
Just clone the entire VM, put it in its own network in the VM place, because you can add as many networks as you need, put it in its own VM. Then when you remote desktop to it and you detonate the malware, you know that malware is not going to go anywhere, And you know once you're done, because obviously you never want to log on to that box again because it's got malware on it. Once you've extracted all the data, you've extracted all the IOCs, you just revert that box to a snapshot or a last known good, or just delete the whole thing
And just start over, yeah.
and start over again.
How did you open up this window again? Is it just on your? Because I'm using VirtualBox, right? Is it on your VM?
Yeah, so VirtualBox, what I'll do for the Thursday session, I'll install VirtualBox and I'll have that running as well for you. So we can do the activities in both. But VirtualBox should have a network emulator that you can control and configure in exactly the same manner.
Okay.
I can show you two later, Joseph, if you want.
Sure. I'd love that, Kenny. Yeah.
Perfect. Make sure you record that for everybody else. Saves me doing it.
I'll stick around for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I can show you. I used both VirtualBox and VMware for a hot minute, and I've watched probably about 30 hours of videos on these things.
Now, there you go. You can teach it instead of me. Why am I teaching this?
Well, you know things that I don't know, and I'm unsafe saying for certain.
Okay, so now that we kind of understand that, so we'll kind of talk. Oh, actually, no, I forgot something. So once you've decided what your networks are going to look like, you then need to decide what your IP addressing is going to look like. So let's just.
Dave, one quick question.
Yep.
So, what is the recommendation for each VM hard disk?
So-
Few of my friends said it is 15 or 20 GB or how much. You confirm again.
Say that again. Sorry.
Hard disk, how much we need to give for each VM?
Oh, you don't need to give a great deal. You can set the disk to 100 gigs, but don't pre-allocate it. So it'll use what it needs, and as a standard, they use about 4.5 to 5 gigs for a Windows box, and about 2.5 gigs for a Linux box. But you can tell the operating system it's got 60 gig to 100 gig available space. And the reason you would do that is if you later want to deploy applications to the box, it'll just use more space as it needs it. You won't have to go and resize the disk physically.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Cool. Okay, so we've got our boxes and we've kind of decided what the network is going to look like. Let's just clear this off a bit. So, you all understand how the routing works, yes? Am I assuming knowledge when I say when we're talking about a default gateway needs to be the router? Everyone understands what that means, yes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so in the middle of this, we have our router. And that router will sit on every network, and that will be the .1 of that network. Now, you can use any of the private address schemes that you want. Hit quick question for everyone. Who can name the three?
Three what?
The three different private address ranges you can use.
I know.
One and two. We're all saying it once.
Yep, so you've got 192.168, which is a slash B used as slash C. So you've got effectively 254 networks, each having 254 hosts, 64,000 available addresses. You've got the 10 network, which is the 10.0.0.0, which is a slash A, and you've got 16 million hosts available in that environment if you want it. And the other one you have is 176.32 or 16 to 32. That's it.
31, 16 to 31.
31, thank you. So and those are your three options. Now, personally, I like to use the 192.168 because that's what most of the world uses when it comes to your personal router, and your by default most home routers, at least this end of the world, are 192.168.0.1 or 1.1. That's the default gateway out to the internet. So what I tend to do inside my VM workstation is I tend to say, okay, I want my internal network to sit on, and I tend to base it based on the VM net name, so that way I can remember which is which. But believe it or not, within VMware you can actually rename the networks. I've lost it. Where's it gone? I closed it, didn't I? Did I close it? Yeah. So, for example, I can add a new network. I can choose, say, 10. And then I can actually rename this network to internal. So it's easy allocation then when you're deploying your box, you know you want to give it the internal. You want it to have its own network. Now, by default, you can turn DHCP on in VMware, and that works if you don't want to configure it on your router. But just make sure that you set your IP address scheme correctly here based on what you want to in your environment here. Yeah? So if I say, right, I want my internal network to be 192.168.50.0/24. So my first available address will be the router, and that will be here, so 50.1. And then in the IP addressing here, so I would say 50. And here, what number do I want to start on?
2.
Exactly. We don't want to use 1 because then it'll try and allocate 1 to somebody other than your router. So you pre-assign it in your router to make routing work, and then your DHCP you set to start at 2. Now, if you want, you can actually get it to start at 50. It's completely up to you. It's not a rule that it starts at 2. If you want to say, right, my first 10 hosts, 1 through 10, I want to be able to allocate to servers instead of, looking up their IP address. But if you want to say your Windows host to be DHCP, or all your networks that you deploy to automatically get an IP address, and such routing will just work as soon as you configure it, then you allocate it here as per you want it. Okay, so my first box will be my Windows 10 box, and with DHCP configured here, let me bring this back over. With DHCP configured, that one will probably get 50.2. Everyone understand, yes?
Yes.
Right. So then next we want to decide, okay, what's the next network we need to worry about? That one is going to be our attack network, bad guys network. So for that one, we'll use 11. Rename that network to say attack network, and in here we'll have 51, and we'll start at 2. It's a what now?
So I wrote 51.
It seems just so nice.
If we're going to be working mostly on VMware, do you think I should just redo it all over on VMware?
No. it totally doesn't matter which deployment you work in. You can do it in VirtualBox instead. And what I'll do on Thursday, I'll deploy VirtualBox beforehand, and I'll show you how this stuff will work in VirtualBox as well.
Right. But I'm just saying, just for like consistency, like just so that we can follow along.
For sure. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
It's completely up to you. Completely up to you.
Okay. So
There's more YouTube resources about VirtualBox and VMware from my experience. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to find VirtualBox has got a lot more of a following. I'm just one of those sticklers to stick into what I've always used, and I've been using VMware since version 4. And you know, we're now on version 17, so it's just whichever flavor works for you. It's the same with, you know, Windows versus Linux, Kali versus any other variation. You know, you use what you used to. But like I say, for coverage, I'll deploy VirtualBox this week, and I'll show you the deployment in VirtualBox as well.
Okay, cool.
Hey Dave,
Yep.
are you gonna do it on Proxmox as well?
So, Proxmox, just so you're aware, doesn't run in an operating system. So you can't use Proxmox in the same way that you do VMware or VirtualBox. Proxmox is the equivalent to ESXi or vSphere. Yeah. So you need to actually deploy it on a physical box. I have a physical box on its way, and I'll deploy it into there for you, so you can see it. But I won't be able to deploy it on my host in the same way, because it's something that you download as an ISO file and install onto a physical box as a hard operating system. Although that said, for the giggles of it, I'll see if I can install it into VMware host, just to have a Proxmox virtualization world within VMware. I'll do that on Thursday for the giggles, just to see if it can be done.
Can I just ask a question regarding your subnetting on this on this one? I think I have like a pfSense as a router, and I think I can do this with VLANs.
Yes. Well, that's exactly what these are. These are VLANs.
Okay. So basically, the Kali box is the only machine that's out of the scope of the subnets, right?
Yes.
Okay. Cool. I think I got it now. And one more question, Dave. Is your Windows 22 server, is that host only, or?
So my Windows 22 server is going to have one on everything. So my one is going to have a bridged network. It's going to have the internal network. It's going to have the attack network, and it's also going to have the Splunk network and my malware lab network.
Okay. Thank you, Dave.
No worries at all. All right.
I have a quick question, Dave. Where does the SSID fit into all this in the scope of things?
The SSID in terms of your Wi-Fi?
Yeah, I'm just wondering where it fits.
It doesn't.
Okay.
Because you're not connecting into your Wi-Fi from these boxes. They exist only within the realms of your desktop.
Oh yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Right, what typo have I got here that's stopping this from assigning? VMnet 10. The IP and subnet are a mismatch. No, they're not. 192.168.50.2 /0. What's wrong with that?
All my networks are configured.
I see why. It's all right.
Yeah,
I've just realized what I've done. It actually wants the network address, not the first host address. Then you go into DHCP settings, and here's where you set your network address for the allocation. See, this is what I'm talking about, learning.
Wait, can you repeat that? What did you?
So this network address here is the network address, the /24 network address, and the subnet mask. And then in the DHCP settings is where you set your first and last host for the IP allocation.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. Right.
Right, so that works now, and if I go into here and set this to 50, set that to 50, set that to 2, set that to 20, there we go. Alright, so everyone understands about this piece now, yeah? We've got our addressing allocated to our networks, we've got our networks allocated to their role, and we're good to go now, yes? Now, again, you can leave them in the default ones if you want. If I add another one, it'll have its own one. And if you want to leave it on the default, that's totally acceptable. But I'm a stickler for not remembering which IP addresses are where. So knowing that 50 is attack and internal, 51 is attack, and 52 is my Splunk, I'm very quickly going to learn what every host address is, because it'll either be .1 or .2, and it'll be in the 50 range based on which network it's in. It's going to be a lot quicker than remembering 128 is for internal, 91 is your attack, and 165 is your Splunk box, and it'll just drive you nuts. We're at time. If you guys want to drop off, you're welcome to do so, but I'm going to hang around for a bit.
And our Windows server is going to work on that bridge afterwards, though.
Yeah, we won't forget that this time, will we? 52. Oh. Set that to 52 first. DHCP settings.
Hey, Dave.
David.
Yep.
I just have a question. You have like a host IP address, of 192.168.58, right? Oh no, it's bridge.
That's
okay.
That's the first network. That's your host only network. That's VMnet 1. My main network is 0.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So basically, every VM has a different IP address, or you
Yeah.
can just...
So what we'll do now that we've allocated our IP addresses, our IP address scheme, if we now go to our Windows box and go to the settings, and then the network adapter. So the first one has NAT because I don't set it to bridged. Although sometimes I do, it depends on how I'm feeling that day. But now we need to add one of each of the networks. Go to custom, and now they're nicely named, so we know which ones we need. We don't have to remember whether it was 8, 9, 10 or 15. And then add another one. Network adapter, and we want that one on attack, and then add another one, and then we want this one to be Splunk, which I've lost. There it is. Okay. And yeah, it'd be relatively similar for Proxmox as well. But like I say, I need a physical host to install that on. I haven't played with that one yet. But I think Proxmox is a bit more of a pig to set up. Right, so let's just quickly check our network adapters.
Proxmox, not Proxbox. Proxmox.
Proxmox, yeah. Proxmox is another virtual environment that works a bit like ESXi. It's very similar to VMware. Okay, so we have our networks, and remember what I was talking about originally. It sets them to public by default. So each of these networks on this host are all considered public. So later on, we're going to need to set them to private so that the services are open to each other. But for the time being, we'll leave it as is. Right, so to set this server up as a router, we need to install remote access, routing and remote access. So to do that, we bring up the server manager. We go to configure this server or click add roles. It's just as easy. In fact, that's the way to do it. Click next, role based, next, and then you want remote access. Click next, and then if you scroll down, you want routing. I'm going blind again. Where is it? Did I click the right one? I didn't click the right one, did I? Go back.
Yeah, that gives you routing, then gives you access to the routing machine.
It was in remote access, wasn't it?
No, I think
There it is. Yeah, routing. That's the one I want. There we go. Add features. That's it. You don't need the VPN access, but you can figure that later if you want to. Click next, and install. Yeah, you're not 3 minutes late, Sammy. You're over an hour late. But don't worry, it's recorded, and it's also live on YouTube. So if you want to go and rewind it and watch from the beginning, you can. That's totally up to you. For now, we don't need to do nothing on our Windows 10. Let's get this bit working first. YouTube link. That's a good question.
Yeah, that's a good question. I didn't want to answer. Didn't want to out there. But hey, you're on YouTube too. Come on, but just send a link.
Just search for his name.
Yeah, I think if you search my name in YouTube, you find me, because I don't like to hide from the world. I just use my real name for everything.
Yeah, I found you on YouTube yesterday.
Oh my God, you're on YouTube. Oh my.
Well, Dave's famous.
I've had a YouTube account since 2008, and I've posted about 4 videos and deleted about 600.
So you posted 604 videos?
No. There's 4 on there, but what I have a tendency to do is I'll say, right, I'm going to be a gaming streamer, and then I'll have like 6 months of streaming varying games, and then I'll be like, no, I'm bored of this now, and I'll just go and delete them all.
I've done that a bunch of times already.
I think if you go on my channel now, there's still a few old ones of me learning chess challenges from a grandmaster friend of mine who was teaching me chess. I haven't deleted them, don't know why, they're just there, kind of just left them there. But they're not relevant to cybersecurity, I assure you.
Keep posting these cybersecurity ones now, that's what you're saying.
Yeah, so what I want to do is I'm going to share everything I do here on my YouTube channel as well. So you don't need to keep track of you know, the latest Zoom recording that may or may not be in campus. If you've missed a session or other students want to get in on it, then it'll always be there on my YouTube channel. You can come back and watch it at any time.
Hey, Dave.
Yep.
All right. How many people here?
Damn it.
You should have 43.
Cat keeps going in and out.
I got 2 subscribers as of this morning, I think.
Have another 48 now because no 43. Because
Come on.
Okay, so we've installed routing and remote access, and it's now here for us to configure. And then you go to tasks and you click here to configure it. Actually, don't do that at all because it's a pain in the ass way of doing it. Click here, type routing, and go directly into the application. Way easier. Okay, so first things first, you need to turn it on. So first you configure it. Now, don't forget to do what I didn't do the first time. So you have the option of remote access, you have NAT, you have virtual private, and then secure between two networks, which is effectively your routing. What you actually want is a custom configuration, and you want to turn on NAT and LAN routing. Don't do what we did last time and sit there for 20 minutes trying to figure out why I can't access the internet. You must turn on NAT as well. Even if you're going to put a pfSense box between the internet and your router, you still need to do NAT translation at the router if you want all of your sub networks to be able to talk to the internet at some point.
I'm working with Proxmox. I just dropped a link to the documentation of my installation. Like I'm documenting everything myself, even though they do it for you kind of already on the internet. But you guys can click that link to follow me on the Proxmox installation so far.
Cool. That'll save me. Well done. Okay, right. Believe it or not, that is all you actually need to do at the routing tier. You don't need to configure which routing technology you need to do at this stage. You don't need to get any special. It is now running. I think if I remember, it just uses direct access connectivity because you don't have any other routing going on. And I think by default it uses IGMP as the routing protocol. But that is it. It's configured. Now, if I want to quickly test this, I've got my Windows 10 box. Go into here, and instead of having it on NAT, I stick it on internal. So my Windows 10 box is now on my internal network.
That was my fault. I was watching the live video. It's turkey neck or something. I guess.
Wait an eternity. It's the first time I've actually logged on to this since I installed it, so bear with it a second. It's going to be the world's smallest installation.
Yeah, you're gonna kind of try to change the resolution settings a little bit.
Yeah, you need to install tools before you can do that. Alright, while that's doing its thing... Oh no, I already did the IP address, didn't I? So let's just quickly check what IP address it has. Whoops. Okay, it has an IP address. What does it not have?
A gateway.
Why does it not have a gateway?
Because I think you're like tapping on the host network.
Nope, because I forgot to set one up in the VMware. So go back into network editor. Bring up my network editor, bring up my internal, go into my DHCP setting. What we don't have here configured is a default gateway for each of the networks. So, and this is why I don't use DHCP in VMware. Now I remember why. So, what we'll do is we're going to turn off DHCP here.
You have to keep your full attention.
Mute if you're talking to your family, please.
What do you think you can do?
Did she mute?
After you've told me to leave your house, so that's the highest thing you can do. So what else do you think you can do again?
That'll be no. Now she is. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's turn off DHCP here as well. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and we're good. No worries, dude. Chat to you soon. Okay, so let's go back to our Windows Server box. Nope, we want the router. Go into networking. And predefine our network addresses on our setups. Now, this one is going to be bridge. So if we bring up our network editor, because I don't know about you guys, but I don't remember which one's which.
Yeah, we don't have network editor because you got Pro, but we can use
Oh,
that.
actually, they should have IP addresses. Oh, look at that, they do. How convenient. Okay, so Ethernet 1 is 50, so that's internal. Properties. IP4. Use the following. 192.16. Wait, number lock. 192.168.50.1. Default gateway we don't set. DNS we don't set. Close. 2 is 51, so that's our attack network. Properties. Properties 192.168.51.1. Close, and then our last one was the Splunk network properties, and that was 52. 192.168.52.1. Okay. Right, so now if we run that again with /all, what we have on our default adapter is our DNS servers and our preferred IP address. And the reason this is our DNS service is because we're using NAT and not direct access. And then each of the rest of them oh, okay, weird. We've got 51.1, 52.1, and 50.1. So now we can do release. Does it just refresh them all back to properties? Yes, it has. Rude. Which one am I on? 0. Don't want to do 0. Leave 0. No, it's good. Okay. Can you guys hear my dog snoring behind me, by the way?
No.
Okay, good.
I don't hear him.
Why is it setting that? That's weird. It shouldn't be doing that. Let's just double check. 192.50.1. Yep, that's correct. Okay. It'll catch up in a minute. Okay, so now what do we need to do? We need to add from our server manager a new role for what?
Routing? No, you already did that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we already did that. So what were we missing?
One?
Hmm.
Or no, no, what was it?
The DHCP? Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Was it PSense, was it?
No, DHCP.
Oh, yeah.
Because we want to allocate DNS and we want to allocate default gateways.
I statically applied IPs to all my machines. Is that going to change anything?
That works too. That's fine. But as you're building set networks and you're moving VMs from host to host and network to network, having DHCP configured and having them auto configure on an IP address means they'll always have the right IP address. You don't have to then remember, go, why can't I reach it? Ah, yeah, because it's pre-configured with this IP address.
Okay.
Okay, so that's now done. So go here, DHCP. We don't need that open. No, don't need to add a server. We've got a server. We need to. There we go. Okay, so we need a new scope. And our first scope will be called internal. And it'll be 192.168.50.2. And we don't want to worry about exclusions. We don't need to care about that.
Are you going downstairs? Did you
We
take this one?
want to add a default gateway to ourselves.
Thank you.
So 50.1. Now, if we want DNS, we either have to install DNS locally or we need to point to the DNS server. And because it has a DNS server, it will put that in there by default. What was your question? Is it Conwadi?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, is it just me or my Windows 22 server? It's just giving me the command prompt like a CMD. It's not giving me like I can proceed.
So that means the version of the server you've installed is the light edition, not the full standard edition. You need the standard edition of the Windows Server to get the full configuration. Otherwise, you kind of get a CLI edition of Windows Server for hosting web applications and Docker services, if that's what you want.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that's our first scope. We now need a new one for our attack network. .192.168.51.1. Nope. .2. Yep. Don't need exclusions. Everyone know what the exclusions are for, right?
Can you give us a recap?
So what you would do for your exclusions, if you have a stack of IP addresses that you want pre-allocating, you would stick your exclusions in here. So if you want to say, I don't want to give 192.10 to 25 because they're already pre-configured, but they're inside the range that you're creating, you can say, instead of going and reconfigure those hosts, I'll just exclude their addresses.
Okay, that makes sense, yeah.
Yes, configure the options. Yes, I want a default gateway.
So it's like an ACL maybe for.
Well, basically, it's saying use all of these addresses except the ones that are already in use.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, and activate that one. And then the last one I need is my Splunk service. That is not how you spell Splunk, Dave. By the way, you can call these whatever you want. You don't have to use my naming convention. And you don't even need to do DHCP in this manner if you don't want to, but you'll just find it works if you do it this way. Don't need that, don't need that. Yes, I want to configure 192.168.52.1. Add. Next. 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 Yes. Finish. So, no worries, Dwayne. Off you go. Right, so now I've got DHCP working, and I've now got my routing working. So if I now jump back to my Windows 10 box, and do ipconfig renew, is it on the right VM? On the right network? Settings. Internal host only, yep. I got a funny feeling this server needs rebooting to pick up those IP addresses. Let's just reboot it quickly. Because those weird IP address allocations are stressing me out because I don't know why they were there. Okay, so this is now done. Reboot U2. Right, and then our Kali box, we want that one to be in network, and we want it in custom, and we want it in attack. Okay, and then let's reboot that one too. Damn, that's fast. Okay, that's now back up. Control Alt Insert. Does that do anyone else's headings? It drives me nuts. Alright, so run cmd ipconfig defect. Why? Does it have a 169 address? See, this is the fun you have building your own lab. Stupid stuff like this that shouldn't be a problem is a problem. Alright, network and sharing. Alright, let's get rid of IP6, check IP4, go to properties. Right, it's definitely set 192.168.50.1. Alright, let's just check it doesn't have any other settings. It's got no other allocated IP addresses. Am I going nuts? Ditch that one. That one. 51.1. Yep, yep. Yep. Right, there's no reason why that should be broken either. And then last but not least, again, correct. Oh, I didn't disable IP6, did I? Let's get rid of IP6. I don't need it.
I really don't think you need to disable IP6 because I got one done without disabling it. The one that you done last time with like the videos, you didn't have to disable IP6.
What is it going on about duplicate? Where's it getting duplicate from? Just make sure I haven't pre-configured these on this box instead. I'm pretty sure I haven't. Nope. Where are they seeing duplicate? Any ideas, anyone? Because I'm stumped.
Did you do the setup part properly, like the DNS?
This will be the DNS server, so it's got its own DNS on the main adapter, and that's working correctly. So that's all correct. It's this weird auto configuration IP address, and the fact that it's showing as a duplicate.
Have you got auto configuration enabled? Is there a way to disable that?
You might have to, like, do you do the ipconfig release and then renew?
Yeah, I did that before. That's what broke it in the first place.
Oh no.
Unless it's duplicating from VMware. I bet it's duplicating from VMware. So let's go into VMware. Not that one. I want to edit network adapter. I'm wondering if the host itself is getting that one address in this space. So let's just go into here and change these settings and stick these networks on something completely random, because I've got a funny feeling that .1 has allocated itself here. So VMware 1 we don't need, we need this one, and restore defaults. Wait, no, that'll do everything. Let's just put these on random networks, 100. (101) 102. Apply. And if this fixes it, we all learned something new today. When you set an IP address, it gives itself a .1 address. Alright. Let's reboot the box.
Max, could you get me some ice and a ginger ale, please?
I want ice and ginger ale.
Holy crap, I'm so sorry. I thought I was muted.
Too. I want some ice as well.
Okay, so we're not supposed to see no duplicates when we says that, because I don't see no duplicates on mine, though.
Yeah, but I think the reason I have them is because I set DHCP on the configuration. There we go, see? So we all learned something new today, and that is when you set up the DHCP scope here, the VMware editor, the VMware host, allocates itself .1 in that box. So it will have now allocated itself 100.1, 101.1, 102.1. So I didn't know it did that, and now we all do. Okay, so now that works, by rights, maybe, if we come into here, and our Kali box, whoops, I didn't mean to disconnect that.
Yeah, before we go to type anything, you obviously got to push on that box up there and make sure the internet is connected, because it says you can't.
And now, as you can see, it has the allocation 51.2, and I'll just confirm that it should also have access to the internet. Maybe. Just get on with it. Let's set this. So you can see it. There we go. Right, so DNS isn't working. But it is configured. Ping 192.168. Uh, 168.2. Right, so the NAT's not working on the NAT address. So what we'll do is let's move settings. Let's move it off the NAT and stick it on the direct abridged connection. I did put on the bridged connection, didn't I?
Yeah. I think you did. Saw you.
Right, so let's now do renew. Yes. Okay, so now we have 0.64 and gateway of 1. Ping 8.8.8. Oops. Fat fingers. Okay, we can ping it from there. And now we need to go back in and fix our DHCP scope. Why do we need to fix our DHCP scope?
Because you added a new adapter. It's on a whole new.
Not because we've set the DHCP and DNS. Sorry, the DNS address to the old one, so we now need to update that on the lease to be 0.1 instead. Now, what we'll do later is we'll actually install our own DNS server for control as well, but for the time being we'll just use the router one.
Okay.
So if we go into the scope, into internal, into scope options, and we need to change this one. Remove that. 0.1. Add. Okay. Don't need to worry about Win servers. In fact, we should probably just remove that because we don't want it. Alright, next one. Scope options. DNS server, remove 0.1, add. Okay, and then last but not least, attack, scope options, remove, and change that. 0.1 add. Okay, so now if we go back to Windows 10 box, renew, now good. So if we ping 8.8.8.8, how rude. Why is that not working? Oh, we need to restart the routing and remote access server. Wrong box. Because we've changed the IP addresses. Okay, so now if we go into IPv4 and click show routes, show IP routing table, we now have our default gateway 0.1 and all of the rest of the networks are correctly listed. So now he says unblock 192.168.52.1. That should be scanning our router. I think this is .3, isn't it? .3. Okay, so that's confirmed our routers there. 50.3. Yeah, sure, William. Right, so routing isn't working. Why isn't routing working? NAT's enabled. Ah, no, we need a new interface. We need to set internal.
A rule in that?
It's alright, yeah, that's all it was. We didn't have a rule in that. But that doesn't explain why we can't route through it. We should be able to route through it. But if I remember correctly, that might be because ping's not working. So let's just check by hitting 50.1. And now just checking, do we have access to the internet?
Well, I'll say up there where it says the internet, you gotta click down on that every time up there on the top right corner there by the volume button. Click that button there every time before he does a query. See where the volume button is on top? Right there. We gotta click that every time before he does a query. If not, it says this internet's unavailable.
Really?
You gotta click you gotta click the wire connection thing.
That's disconnected it.
Yeah, well, if it's disconnected, then you don't get the routing right to
Okay, so it says active now.
Yeah, so now he does a query. Sometimes it says a query and the internet or is not available or the network's not available. You got to click on that up there again because I was watching you do it, and you kept clicking up afterwards.
Yeah.
But they go. Remember, it's got some time out on it. Remember, you said you should be able to keep it going, but it keeps disconnecting. So
Right. Yeah. Right. I actually don't want internal. I want Ethernet 0, don't I? And I want that one, and I want that one. There we go. Okay, so now the internet should work.
The internet, yeah? Is that Ethernet 0?
Yeah. There we go. Now we've got the internet working. Alright, so we're not going to forget that now, are we? Right, so now Windows 10 should have access to the internet too. And it does. Okay, so routing works. Right, now if we go into here and go into security, go into firewall, because we love the firewall, and we want to I can't be asked to do it here. Let's just type in firewall and do it using the application. That one. There we go. And for domain, we say off. Private, off. Yep. Public, off. Right, they're all now off. Go back to Kali. Go back to our window. And rescan our Windows 10 box. And ta-da! Okay, so what have we achieved? We have set up a centralized router, Windows 22. It manages our DHCP. It manages our NAT and our route to the internet. And we can now go from our Kali box to our Windows 10 box, which are on physically different VLANs, physically different subnets, and routing is working, and they can connect to the internet. Everybody happy with what we've achieved and think they could go and do it themselves?
Yes. Hopefully.
Excellent.
I'm gonna have to because my internet's not working on my machines. I don't know what's wrong with my thing. So I'm gonna have to figure it out anyways.
Probably similar to the problems I was just having.
I'm just gonna have to go through the recording on YouTube
So-
and check it.
Dave, now if you wanted to run Splunk, you've set everything up to be able to start that process.
Yep.
Before setting it up.
Yep, so all I need to do when I run my Splunk server, so this Windows 22 server, I'll duplicate and use as an active domain server and a Splunk box. No, I don't run Splunk on my Kali box, but you totally can if you want to. And then what I'll do is I'll just stick one of them in the Splunk VM, and it'll automatically get an IP address allocated to it, and it'll have access to the internet.
So will we be like analyzing PCAPs, like maybe using like Zeeks or?
Yeah. So believe it or not, that's the reason why I want to use a Windows 22 server. So if we quickly just install Wireshark, for example. I'll show you what I mean.
Do I put Sysmon on the Splunk server or the router?
We're going to put Sysmon on everything that's Windows.
Okay. Okay.
And we're going to then...
Because I wasn't sure.
And then what we will do is we'll create shared files. We'll do mapped files on the Splunk server, and then get the Splunk server to read directly from the log files. So that it'll just ingest those log files automatically from Sysmon. What was I doing? Wireshark. Why? I hate these adverts, man. Why can't they just put Wireshark at the top? It's not rocket science, Bing. Come on.
AKA Microsoft.
Yeah. We know you want Wireshark, but here's something completely random that kind of does it, but is horrible. You might want that first. Like, why? Because they paid us to ask you.
Yeah. Speaking of Microsoft, this is random, and kind of just to get everyone's wheels turning, but Microsoft was hacked by Russian.
Yes, they were.
A couple weeks ago.
I heard about that.
Yeah, yep, I saw that article too.
It's actually a really interesting one. It's been ongoing since kind of January. It's APT 29, a Russian state actor. You guys should really dig into that. Some really good stuff in there. There's some good stuff that you can play around with in your lab environment too. Don't need access to that. Get rid of that. Ethernet free. Alright, so if we load this up. Ask Jeeves. Oh man, I loved it. Ask Jeeves. Right, so if we want, we just listen on Ethernet 3. We're going to see all the good stuff that's coming from Ethernet 3. But now if we go back to Kali Linux and rerun that scan, slash pt, that's right. Nope. Crap, I forgot the switch. Who can remember? What's the...
Was it ST?
ST, that's it, thank you. Like that. There we go. Right, so we run that scan here, and then on our box here, apparently we didn't see it. Why didn't we see it? Right, let's get rid of that. We don't want multicast. Apply as not selected. And we don't want logic that either. Apply and not selected. Right. Just double check the interface. Uh, 52. 52 was definitely the attack network, wasn't it?
You did 0.3, yeah.
52.1. So let's just ping 192.168.52.1 with -t. Whoops, we don't need -t with this because it just does it forever anyway. I love Linux. Why isn't there a response? Oh, ICMP's not turned on the box. But where's the...
What the fuck?
How's it not seeing that traffic?
You said something about ICMP not being turned on?
It should still see it unless it's physically not getting past the firewall. Alright, control.
But would the firewall stop ping attempts like this?
Yeah. Yeah. By default, Windows servers don't respond to ICMP.
So maybe just turn off the firewall or just temporarily turn off Windows.
Well, I just want to see that this traffic that's going through should come up. Right, that scan against this host should come up. .1 is this box. We don't need that IP address because that's coming from the VMware server.
Yeah, buddy.
We don't need multicast. Right. So let's do a full scan Minus S T and minus A. Oh, alright. No need to be rude about it. Right, so that's going to make loads of noise now. Where's the noise?
Just maybe this isn't the right version of Wireshark.
It shouldn't matter. It should still see the
Just
wire.
maybe it's like a bootleg.
That's nuts. Right, let's go with 50.3 because we know that's going through the box and hitting the Windows 10 box. So that too should be appearing here. So traffic is running, but why is it not seeing it?
So you're looking into like the Windows server. Is the server one you're supposed to be seeing it on, or the actual? Like,
yeah, no, the server is the router. So that traffic going from this box is going through the Windows server
into the actual PC, right?
Into the Windows 10 box, and it's come back and it's seeing the box. It knows that it's a Windows 10 box. But the router, even though the traffic passed, maybe it's because it's not.
Is there any way you can run CMD and just?
I wonder if it's simply because it's not running in. I didn't run it as administrator. Maybe that's what it is.
Are you able to see any network traffic just using CMD, like just anything like that?
Nah, because I'd need to install run T-Shock, but T-Shock runs on the same drivers, so.
Like open connections or something.
Run as administrator.
I'm interested in like the troubleshoot for this, Dave, because I had the same issue like last week. And I haven't I haven't made it this far. I kind of gave up after things didn't work.
So it's seeing traffic now. Right, so let's run this again. I bet it's just because I wasn't in administrator.
Nope, there's
Right.
a spike.
So now it's seeing traffic there and it's seeing traffic there. So let's pull this traffic. Right, that's still crappy, noisy UDP stuff. So let's get rid of that. Apply not selected. We don't want that source IP address. Apply not selected. Simple service discovery, HTTP, where's that coming from? We turned IP6 off, so it shouldn't be routing IP6, so let's get rid of IP6. We don't want IP6, and not selected. Right, so there's now nothing going in there. So now let's run that scan again. And anything that shows should be bad guy stuff. And there's nothing. Oh my life. Well,
Ethernet too.
I
Ethernet
know what
too.
I'm going to be playing with tomorrow. It's trying to figure out why it can't see it.
VMware.
Because it's still going right now. It should be going. It should be seeing it.
It's going through this specific Ethernet, right?
Yeah, it's coming in through Ethernet 3 and going out through Ethernet 1. And in promiscuous mode, it should see absolutely everything. So even though it's not addressed to me, because I'm routing it, it should see it. That's crazy that it isn't. All right, let's watch on 1 instead. Run it again. Ah, there we go. Now we're seeing it.
So you use the Ethernet. I told you to switch it. But why is it 1 though? Isn't it going through 3 into 1?
Exactly. It should still see it.
So if you were an analyst just looking at 3 the whole time, you'd think everything is fine.
Well, yeah, exactly. You wouldn't see it. But what everything you're seeing now is all relation to an Nmap scan. All of this traffic
is an intrusive tech thing, right?
is an Nmap scan. Yeah, I did -A, which is a OS and services version, so it does a full scan on what type of OS it's looking for, and it will do a full scan of all the things. And I think it's finished. Yeah, it's finished. So
if you're
it's,
sitting on the other side of the screen, Dave, and you see this, somebody's scanning your system like this. What's the first thing going through your head?
well, to be fair, I don't tend to care about scanning. Scanning is something that happens everywhere. Seeing an Nmap scan, that I would be concerned about, because an Nmap scan is usually targeted. And what would give a lot of this off is if we do here. In fact, I'll show you the easy way to do it. If we go into flags and look for the SYN packet, wrong flags, I want TCP flags. That's TCP into flags there, and we've got the SYN packet. If we do apply and selected, what you've got here is quite categorically a host scan, or what we tend to call a vertical scan.
How can you tell?
Because it's coming from one host to another host. The source port remains the same on all of them, and the destination port is different. And any rule in Splunk could be quite easily written to say if destination and source port count equals 1, but destination port is greater than 1, then flag it. And if you want to reduce the false positives, you say greater than 10. So basically that means if they scan more than 10 ports on a server, it'll flag up as a port scan. But it'd be much harder to pull this data off the internal point when you're running Metasploit and other things, and when you're monitoring your malware, because what you could quite literally do is have this running on your server, you detonate your malware, and all the outbound connections that it tries to make will pass through your router to your dummy DNS and to your dummy web services, which you'll install afterwards. And you will route through to your router to those dummy services, and all of that data you'll be able to extract from your PCAP and use for your threat hunting. But what you'll also be able to do is export this PCAP into a text file and then import that text file into Splunk. And then you'll be able to do searches to say, okay, how many ports did it look at? These are the ports it looked at. How many of those ports also had a response? And you'll be able to see that. And what that'll give you is that'll tell you how many of the services the attacker got a response from. So which services then to focus your investigation on to see if there was a follow-up attack against it. For example, if you had port 80 open, you saw a response from port 80, you could say, okay, now I just want to look at all traffic where source is 51.2 and destination is port 80. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Excellent. Right. It is way past my bedtime, so that is it for today's session. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful. And we will move on to installing our Splunk service and configuring our Splunk service on Thursday. And we will also look at how we lock down our service using ACLs within Windows Firewall to say what can come in and what can go out.
Perfect.
Wait, Dave. So, what can go in and what can go out of the Splunk log?
Of our entire network. So at the moment, yeah, if we go if we go back to our shiny little I've lost it. Where's it gone? We've got too many bloody windows open. Is it that one? Yep, that one. Yeah. So at the moment, the way we've got it configured is, let's just get rid of the junk. We've got our internet over here. Everything comes into the router from internal, from our attack, and from Splunk. And what we want to be able to do is say, okay, if it comes from the internal and it's going to Splunk, that's okay. If it's coming from attack and it's going to Splunk, that's okay. If it's coming from attack and it's going through internal, that's okay. But if it's coming from Splunk and going into attack, for example, then we don't want that. We only want attack to initiate traffic. We don't want inbound traffic. And what we can do is in the Windows 22 firewall, is we can configure our rules to say which way we want to allow traffic to be instigated and whether or not we want it to be stateful.
Okay, cool. Thank you for the visual, Dave. This is awesome.
No worries at all. And again, like I say, as I said earlier, because we're routing through this box, when we're doing bad stuff and we don't want to worry about infecting our internal personal network, all we need to do is disable that one here. So we come in here and we click disable. Now that's done, we go back to our Windows 10 box. And the internet goes away. All the internal routing will still work, but they won't be able to reach the internet.
Good. That's what we want.
And that's literally all you need to do. And that's another reason why using Windows is slightly easier than going into pfSense, because taking a adapter up and down in pfSense is a lot more pain in the butt than just right-click enable. And now if we go back to Windows 10, refresh the page, Google's back. Nice and easy.
Basically, you can just do that as a test. If you
exactly
turn it
that
off, it'll turn off the internet.
Exactly that. And that way, you know, if you do that first, when you detonate your malware, nothing outside of your virtual environment can be damaged. And as long as you've gone in and done your backups or your snapshots, if you've got the version that permits it, or you've copied the folder, so you have a run of the thing. If your malware that you detonate runs amok across all your other servers in your entire virtual machine, all you simply do is shut it down and delete the lot.
I noticed when you turned it off, it didn't ask for like administrative privileges. Are you by default an administrator on server computers?
Yes, you are.
Okay. So
But
malware.
but it does say that it requires administrative privileges, but it's not asking for the control because I'm logged in as an admin. Yeah.
And there's no way malware on the Bastion host can turn on the internet on its own, right?
No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't do that. But like I said, if you lost control of the malware and it started moving to the other machines, you'd just hit stop and delete the lot.
Okay, makes sense.
But like I say, if you're detonating malware in your environment on a Windows 10 box, for example, you would make sure that your firewall configuration didn't permit that malware host access to any host it wasn't supposed to reach.
Right, makes sense.
And you would make sure you did that off the malware box. You wouldn't control that on the local firewall, for example, because in a lot of cases, the first action of the malware is to disable the firewall and the antivirus. So you need to make sure that you block those routes somewhere else, so that malware's got nowhere to go other than the tunnels and funnels that you give it. And this is all stuff we'll play with later on, and we'll detonate some malware in the environment later.
Do you need to reset up like the clone to your network, or after you've set up your network situation, when you clone it automatically joins the network?
Yeah, so all you need to do is on the physical hardware, where the box is. So in the physical box where I've got my Windows 10 box, all you need to do is shut it down, right click copy, and have another folder here called clean. Put a copy of all of your VMs in there that you know good, and then when you run your malware, you simply delete the folder, go and get a copy of a clean version, put it back in, turn it on, and it'll be configured as is today.
Oh, it makes sense, yeah.
Yeah? And it's simple as that. And as long as you don't start messing up where the clean ones are, where the bad ones are, and you're very strict on, right, that's had malware on it, delete, don't risk it, get a new version, open it, make sure it's configured as per your last settings, and you're good to go. And that's kind of why we do this setup first, is you get this known good environment now that you can always come back to, because if you had a copy of all of these 4 hosts, your Kali, your Windows 10 and your router and your Windows Server, it doesn't matter what you do in that environment, you can delete them all, the live versions, bring over a copy, turn them all back on, and you will be exactly where we are today. Routing working, internet access, Windows 10 configured, job done. Okay?
Okay.
Excellent.
Nice.